Welcome everybody to the Congestion Management Committee. I'm going to read off the notice of non-discrimination. You were invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status or background. And you can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostonmpo.org/MPO_non_discrimination. And our accessibility statement, this meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: web content accessibility guidelines 2.1, level AA standards, and revised sections 508 standards. If you require any accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or you have any technical difficulties, please contact Lauren McGee, MPO staff at lmagee@ctps.org or 857-702-3706 or in the chat box. So all participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, your last name, and your affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute themselves, and to participate in the discussion, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. And let me change my title here. All right, so we'll do a round of introductions. I'm Jay Monty. I'm Director of Transportation at the City of Everett, and I'm the Chair of the Congestion Management Committee. And Lauren, do you have a list we can read from?
Yes, I'll call the roll.
Great.
Okay, so we already did City of Everett, so City of Boston.
Jen Rowe, I am Shalou in the City of Boston.
Three Rivers Interlocal Council.
Yeah, Steve Olanoff, Trick Subregion, Town of Norwood.
MBTA Advisory Board.
Hannah Swilikowski, Deputy Director of the MBTA Advisory Board.
Regional Transportation Advisory Council.
Hunter Dickens Advisory Council here.
MassDOT. Circle back. Massachusetts Port Authority. And the Town of Arlington.
This is John Alessi with the Town of Arlington.
Okay. And I'll circle back to MassDOT. I don't think John Romano is present. And then Sarah Lee is also not present. So that's the role, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll move to item 2, which is public comments. Any public comments, please raise your hand. Seeing none, move to action item number 3, which is approval of the August 17th, 2023 CMP committee meeting minutes. And I believe these are sent out to the membership a little while ago. Any, take a motion to approve?
I'll move we approve the minutes of August 17th, 2023.
Thank you, Steve. A second? Leonard?
Not that I remember anything that happened 14 months ago, much less 4 months ago. I'll second it.
Thank you. All right.
Can we just change it where next to my name it says 3 Rivers Interlocal Council under attendance, Town of Norwood. The Ponset Valley Chamber of Commerce just dropped it in the Ponset Valley Chamber of Commerce. That's been corrected in later versions, but this one is so old.
All right, so we'll approve the minutes with that correction. Lauren, is that right?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, so motion passes, minutes approved.
Sorry, we have to do a roll call.
Oh, sorry, roll call for us, right?
No,
Okay.
no worries. City of Everett.
Yes.
City of Boston.
Yes.
3 Rivers Interlocal Council.
Yes.
BTA Advisory Board.
Abstain.
Regional Transportation Advisory Council.
Yes.
And the Town of Arlington.
John Alessi will abstain. Wasn't a part of the committee then.
So ooh. So we have 4 yeses. I think you would need 5 for that to pass. Is that correct?
You have to read the wherever they are, the
Bylaws?
laws. Yeah, to say if it says a majority of the committee or majority of those present, so.
Usually it's the majority of those present. You get a quorum
Those
and
present.
there's usually the majority of those present,
Okay, then that would
Yeah.
pass, yes.
That's standard. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sure, no problem.
All right, so we're ready to move on to item 4, which is review of roadway pricing work. And this was some work that the staff had undertaken last year and given a introduction on, I think it was 14 months ago, it's quite a while ago. So Sarah Philbrick, you're ready to share some additional work.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, this is just a quick update because the last time that this committee met, this was what we talked about, and it's been quite a long time because unfortunately Ryan Hicks left the agency, although I'm super happy to introduce everyone to Priyanka and have her lead the committee meeting today. So I just wanted to share that while our report was published last winter and everyone on this committee has likely seen our roadway pricing report, I just put a link in the chat to the CTPS trending topics or the MPO's trending topics page on our website, where that report is linked, but there's also a 2-page summary of the report in PDF form that feel free to share with others who in your networks who might be interested in sort of an overview of the different types of roadway pricing programs. At the board meeting, you might have also heard that Tegan was able to speak at a City of Boston City Councilor hearing about roadway pricing and really helping folks understand the different types of roadway pricing policies that exist beyond cordon pricing. So our work is being used in different ways. We're happy to continue to share it. That is the update from the last report that came out. And then in federal fiscal year 25, there is money set aside for a discrete study in the UPWP for a second phase of our roadway pricing work. The study is called Roadway Pricing, Balancing the Need for a Transition to Sustainable Mobility with Equity Considerations. The scope for that work has not been written or approved by the board yet, but that will be coming to the board in the fall, and so keep a lookout for that. So I just wanted to wrap this piece up so that we're not forgetting about the roadway pricing work, but we are moving on to other CMP work as well that Priyanka will get to next, and I'll turn it back over to Jay.
Quick question, Jay? Although you
Sorry,
seem
I was
to
on
be
mute.
in the front.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I know we all really appreciate the work that you all have done on the roadway pricing, and there's a lot more to do. So we're looking forward to seeing that down the road. I'm going to turn it over now to Priyanka.
Quick question, Jay.
Yeah,
Excuse me. Quick question. To Sarah, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Len.
Okay, thanks. So is the plan still to have this wrapped up by the end of the year so that the Transportation Finance Task Force can use what you learn in terms of helping them?
The discrete study funded for FFY 25 will not be done by the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
But we are happy to continue to share the study from last year or make different versions of it available for whatever the task force needs if we hear that.
Okay.
And Tegan might have more to add on that. I know her hand is raised.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, if I may, Jay, is that okay?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to be off camera, yeah. So I think the thing to acknowledge here is that when we set up this plan to spend it, initially we were targeting completing the study within the calendar year. We also had a very different understanding at the time of what the task force might be, accomplishing within the year. That's sort of shifted, right? Like the messaging around what it's going to do and what the product is going to be has shifted. So we're having internal conversations about that now, and also with some of the the stakeholders involved in this to try to figure out what is most useful to do and whether it is still useful to try to front load the work, or whether it makes more sense to sort of decouple it from the time frame that was the task force ending point. So it's a work in progress. Is to answer your question, Len. We're not quite sure yet what we think would be most useful for everyone.
Thank you. I'm going to resist following up on that because it's just not the place for it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5. So I was saying Priyanka is relatively new to the MPO, and she's taking over the role of Ryan Hicks previously held, running the Congestion Management Committee. So first, just a big welcome to Priyanka, and I've had a chance to speak with her on a few occasions, and really excited about the direction she plans to take this committee. But I'll leave it to her to introduce herself and explain what she has coming up.
Thank you for that introduction, Jay. And hi, everyone. My name is Priyanka Chapekar, and I joined about a couple of months ago as the Congestion Management Process Program Manager at the MPO. And yeah, this meeting was just the aim of this meeting or this update is to just give all of you an update on what I've been working on since we started and where the work on the CMP currently is. Before we get started, I would just like to take a quick moment to apologize for any confusion in scheduling that might have happened because of I'm working remotely from a different time zone right now. So I think that might be a big part in the confusion in setting up the time and then the link for the meeting, but it's all good. We are all here now, and I'm really excited to present the work we've done. Next slide, please. Yes. So a bit of background on the congestion management process, or the CMP. So the CMP is basically a document that is federally required for transportation management areas, or TMAs, which have a population greater than 200,000, and the Boston region being home to more than 3.4 million people. The CMP is definitely something that's very relevant for our region. And I think it's worth mentioning here that this sort of whole revamping or revision to the CMP is something we are looking at right now, because the last full update that happened was in 2004. And since then, there have been a lot of projects and studies and work done in bits and pieces, which was the roadway pricing policy work that Sarah just talked about, or looking at different performance metrics, looking at what events cause non-recurring congestion in the Boston region, and so on. But this sort of whole full and comprehensive holistic approach to updating the CMP is something that's long overdue, and something that's the aim for the upcoming year. So the Federal Highway Administration has a detailed guidebook on how the CMP for regions is to be carried out. And as it's a process, not a plan, it's something that needs to be updated constantly and continuously through performance monitoring. So this is a very long and complicated definition provided by the FHWA, but if we move to the next slide, the key takeaways from that are it's basically an approach for managing congestion based on monitoring system performance of transportation networks, and the aim is to come up with strategies to reduce that congestion. So the CMP is a continuous process that is supposed to change and adjust over time as the goals and objectives of the region and the needs of the region change. We get new data from different sources and come up with new strategies to make up for to come up with performance monitoring for different strategies for the performance monitoring. Next slide, please. Yes, so the FHWA basically has 8 steps, or an 8-step model that defines how the CMP has to progress. And the first step in that guideline is coming up with regional objectives for the CMP. So these are the current objectives that we have developed, and they have been developed in alignment with the broader LRTP, long range transportation plan, 2050 goals for the MPO. So the first one is setting up strategies. So basically looking at ways to compile and collect data and evaluate and analyze it to quantify congestion. The second one is to improve on movement of people and freight across the region and make it more efficient and reliable, not just through roadways or through vehicles, but through all of the different modes. The third one is, again, evaluating transportation networks, which are multimodal, so that we can work on efficient travel demand management and also to identify gaps in the different modes of transportation in terms of their connectivity, so that the overall utilization of the entire multimodal system can be increased. The fourth one goes in alignment with the healthy communities goal of the LRTP. So by looking at reducing traffic volumes, consequently the air pollution would be reduced, and that would promote healthier communities in our region. And then the last one is to come up with ways of setting up systems for monitoring different performance on different transportation modes, so that so that there's different processes in place to continuously evaluate congestion, so that we have improved economic vitality, racial economic equity, improved public health, and also improved climate resilience in the region. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the way that I plan for this presentation to go is sort of go back and forth between work that we have done and then going out to the participants to get their insights or their feedback or any questions that they might have on the topic that was discussed. So I'd like to pause here and ask whether there are any initial thoughts, suggestions, recommendations on those objectives that we talked about just now. Yes, Dan?
Yeah, I read over the documentation from the feds, and I am very concerned with the time slicing aspect of transit. What I mean by that is that we have a regional flow that is trying to get into the city of Boston, but we in Charlestown specifically needs to cross that flow, and we don't necessarily get the window of timing that we need in order to achieve that. We're okay right now, but with the future build out of our own community and communities that are north of us, we will not have that. In which at that point, we will become more isolated than we are today. So I understand the premise here, and I'm not against it. It's just that there has to be accommodation for the community that is being, I guess, severed with that transit corridor, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, I think this comment is definitely useful for us to come up with performance metrics as we are working on them, to include that sort of multimodal perspective and make sure that movement is improved and no communities are isolated, or the development of any community is not hindered. And this is a good way of looking at land use development and in conjunction with transportation networks. So yeah, this is definitely something that we will be considering.
Yeah, just be sure that it's also time-based, so that the rush windows
Yes.
are looked upon independently of the lull time points.
Yes,
that's
for
it.
sure. For sure, yeah. Looking at that sort of rush hour, peak hour traffic is also something that the CMP definitely works on. So yeah, this comment is definitely helpful for that. Jen?
Thank you. I was just wondering if you could reverse the slide one so we could see the objectives. Thank you. I might have a comment, but it's a little more time to process.
Okay, we have a question here. What is the difference between objective 1 and objective 5. So the first one is just figuring out strategies to evaluate congestion patterns in the Boston region. And then objective 5 is basically looking at also implementing those strategies through setting up those monitoring systems for all of the different transportation modes, if that answers the question. Any other questions or suggestions, comments? Yes, John.
Hi, Priyanka. Thanks for that presentation. I'm relatively new to this committee. Well, it's my first meeting I've attended this committee, and I just wanted to get a little bit of background. Is the CMP a new type of document that's required by FHWA? Are there existing ones that the Boston MPO has submitted in the past? I'd love to get a little bit of the history of the CMP and the objectives here as well, as a newcomer.
Yes, sure. So, so the CMP is a document that has been federally required for a long time now. So this is definitely not a new federal requirement. But the significance for the CMP for the Boston region is that the last full comprehensive update that happened was around 20 years ago now, back in 2004. So yeah, like revamping and revising all of the goals, because the goals of the LRTP have also changed over the years, and aligning the objectives of the CMP with that is also pretty much something that's given in the federal guidelines. Like the objectives of the CMP or the functioning of the CMP should work together with the metropolitan transportation planning process. So and then with like, as so many years have passed, we definitely have more relevant, more recent data, more recent issues that need to be tackled. So this revision or updation of the CMP is something that's for sure necessary.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that background.
Yes, Dan?
Sorry, I can't unmute anymore. My only other concern here is the metrics aspect of it. The primary flows need to be monitored, but it's also the secondary flows that are going in or across the primary flows that need to be monitored as well. So that means there's a lot more monitoring that needs to be done than I think the implication in the document implies. The other thing here is that there has to be a baseline before we make change, if that makes sense, because that's the other thing that I've also found with some of our issues in the previous past, that we didn't have the metrics that we just desperately needed and wanted and asked for, never getting collected, so that there was nothing to foundation for the change. So that must happen here for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So your question was about like monitoring systems for monitoring the performance.
Well, yeah. So flow rates is an example. So you get a given hour or half-hour time point, how many vehicles or people, which could be a bicyclist as an example, or someone that's taking the MBTA by bus or otherwise, how many people are taking a given pathway, as best you can, obviously. In this case, from a road perspective or a pathway perspective along across a major highway, or a primary transit corridor, that you have an idea of what is happening in relative time, so that you have, for instance, from 6 a.m. to 10, you have a very defined number of people per the half hour or every 15 minutes as an example. So you know what is the rush window
Yeah.
and what people are looking at trying to achieve during that rush window. And obviously in the evening, the same thing. And then your lull time point. So while noon is not necessarily thought of as a lull, it is also in many cases is, but also after 6 would be another lull time point, and maybe early in the AM would be another time point. So that you have a collection of metrics that you can use to figure out what is the necessity as far as what you have. Now, one of the other problems of these measures is that the assumption is that is the measure and not what could be if someone had better capability. So here in Charlestown example, we definitely want more pedestrian pathway and cycleway pathways across our bridges, which we do not have. So we cannot acquire the data to argue the point because there is no pathway that exists. So I can't define it because as being needed because I don't have a data point to leverage. So we get into these false starts because we don't have the data or can necessarily model it in such a way that we can see that the need is there. So we need something more, but at least we have that, a metric.
Yeah, we'll definitely have metrics, and then as you mentioned, looking at the actual like real-time data rather than looking at like possibilities or possible potential is also a part of the CMP when we are deciding what the performance metrics should be, and that will come a bit later in the presentation as well, as I am talking about like current steps and progress that we have achieved so far. But yeah, thank you for that comment, and yes, hopefully we will be able to incorporate like real-time methodology for monitoring rather than just modeling or like looking at possibilities.
Now, here's one last bit, and that is virtual modeling. So that you have a map, as an example, that you apply these metrics across so that you can visually see them as the fallout of all this. That would be important. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Yes, Jen?
Yeah. So I guess just to clarify, we're to be kind of offering thoughts and feedback on these objectives written out here on the slide. Is that okay? Cool. So I guess when looking at number 3, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to this. It seems like there's a second half of the objective. I understand it is like related to kind of trying to maybe help connect the networks. But I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to what you mean by multimodal networks, is kind of disentangle what all each of those are in the context of this, and also maybe speak a little bit to how you're thinking about efficient travel demand management. Is that specifically related to automobiles? Is that also multimodal? How are you thinking about measuring efficiency? Like I know in the city of Boston, we're talking a lot about reliability, at least in the context of kind of the types of tools we have available to us as a city in terms of managing demand without some sort of a Verde pricing, which is something you've also been looking into. But so yeah, I was wondering if you could pick apart that bullet a little bit more.
Sure. So multimodal transportation network is something that we've been thinking of because the Boston region already is served by a lot of different modes other than just automobiles. So that's also something that will come up in the next step of the CMP, which is the CMP networks and how we've defined it. And I think that part would make it more clear what is meant by that multimodal transportation network term. And in terms of making it more efficient, so it will definitely include like reducing congestion for like single occupancy vehicles or like automobiles basically, but we are also looking at how we can promote or like come up with strategies to promote usage of different modes like bike shares or transit to make sure that like as a possible solution to reducing the amount of cars on the roads. So that's where we were thinking of going with like efficient travel demand management in terms of multimodal networks. If that's
Can I
helpful
follow
at
up?
all.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess maybe to summarize, if I'm understanding this correctly, that the emphasis on the multimodal modes here is to, providing alternatives to
Mhm.
then ultimately not have as many vehicles on the road.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Priyanka? Steve?
Yeah, so I was wondering, well, first of all, did you mention this, the CMP, is it a doc, is it an actual document? Because I don't recall actually seeing it or reading it.
Mhm. Yes, so like different MPOs have different ways of approaching it. Most of them, like mostly it's presented as a report for the congestion management process, but it can also take on different forms, which might be more interactive and which is basically not just one planned document, because the objective of the CMP is basically to have like continuous and ongoing monitoring and updation of data as it becomes available. So we are aiming at not having that kind of one single document plan, but instead looking at other avenues, which would make it more digitalized and make sure that it's staying updated.
Yeah, so you don't have an actual document that you can pick up and just read in the.
Yes, there will be a report, but if we are looking at the actual like in terms of data available, that would definitely keep being updated online rather than like one single document.
All right. Now the data that we've used, I think, has mostly been data from NREX that we've been using over the years, and referencing what Dan Jeffrey was asking about. Does that get to the level that he wants for instance, for Charlestown? That because he seems to want it to be a pretty fine level. And does NREX, the data we get from them, get down to that detailed level?
So INRIX mostly has data related to traffic and vehicles or automobiles. But if we are looking at improving transit efficiency, we also have like data sets provided by the local transit providers. So maybe like doing a conflation of some sort of the two would help in making sure that transit and like data for both transit and roadways is being monitored simultaneously.
So what are the other ways that you're gathering data besides NREX? I mean, obviously there's studies done here and there, and all in different pieces. It's not all together in any one thing. So how's that all working? How is that?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different data sources that we are referring now. There's some data by the MAPC, some most of it, like a lot of it on INRIX, some of it is on the NPM RDS, some from the MBTA website for public transportation specifically, and then also some other websites that we are referring, like even the American Community Survey, for instance, to like come up with data that would associate with performance metrics as we are working through them.
And the MPO has a traffic model, or I should call it a transportation model. How do you interact with that to get, or use that or interact with that to get more the what you're looking for here?
So the model is more used more for like modeling scenarios in the future. So when we reach that point in the CMP, when we are looking at how performance measures might improve or might need to improve, then that would be the time when we would interact with the model a bit more. But right now the stage is just collecting data, available data from different sources rather than looking at future projections.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, you got another question?
Yeah, I just want to add to Steve's point, the virtual map space is what I was hoping to have all this data collected at different layers. So you would have your bicycle networks, your transit networks, the public transit that is, subways versus buses, and then your vehicles, and that may break down to cars versus trucks, so that you have, a layer cake of all the different vehicle types,
Yes.
transit paths that people are using. So that way, when you model things out, you have a legitimate source. Here in Charleston, we tried a few times to get that data so that we could model things out, and we couldn't. It was all separated in so many different places that there was no way of merging it into a collective storyline. And that is the problem that we encountered, because we only had City of Boston metrics for our local streets, but that didn't imply on how the transit into Rutherford, as an example, or in and out of Rutherford by others. We couldn't get it. This doesn't exist. So that's where the necessity of modeling is so important. And Steve is absolutely right. It needs to be in a unitized form that the appropriate people have access to. I, as an example, should not have access to it because I'm just a citizen, but maybe I should be able to ask for a subset of that when we need to deal with a certain subject matter, but that doesn't exist. And one more point, and that is the shuttling of people by cab or Uber is going to be an important thing. And one of the things that I fear is going to hit us hard, especially Boston, is going to be self-driving vehicles, because you're going to have a huge population who will own these, or already do in fact have, where they can hit a button and say, drop me off at home at work, and then go park yourself somewhere. And the amount of traffic add-on into our infrastructure is going to cripple us. So I'm really worried about that element. And then again, I also want to see what I call first last mile transit created. In Charleston, we desperately need that. We have local T stations, 4 of them, in fact, but they're a mile away from us, literally, and we can't get to them. During the weather, when the weather's bad, especially. And then we also have 2 mammoth hills right in the middle of us. So people have to cross over those hills in order to get to the transit. So there's, we have to think about those things too. Topology, limitation, in the case of water, that creates limits of transit, which can also be beneficial in the case of ferry service, but there again, there has to exist. So there's so many little eddies and problems in this whole mess that unless you have a modeling foundation, you won't see it as far as the failures.
Yes. Yeah, those are really helpful comments, Dan. And yeah, I think if you are facing trouble with maybe having access to some any specific data, then you can always reach out to the MPO, and then we will try our best to give you access to that data, or at least let you know what we know, so that you have access to whatever the data that you need, and you feel that you're not having it.
You've been helpful in the past. I've gotten some, but obviously, if it doesn't exist, you can't have it.
John?
I was just wondering if you could summarize the next steps for these objectives. Will there be an opportunity for us to provide feedback outside of this meeting context?
Sorry, can you say that again? Like for the objectives or for the next steps that are being currently done?
I guess, like, what are the next steps for this set of objectives in terms of, are there additional opportunities for comment on how they're formulated? And if so, like, kind of what's the timeline on that?
Mhm.
Will they be presented to the board as a whole? Yeah, so just kind of understanding kind of, I understand that these objectives are
Mhm.
being set to then inform the how the CMP is conducted. So just kind of understanding how those.
Yes, I think
fit.
we can definitely, these are just like the preliminary ones, and yeah, this hasn't gone through the board yet, and I think we might have more opportunity to maybe revise it or come back to this again in future CMP meetings. If not, also like we can also decide the frequency of the CMP committee meetings towards the end of this meeting, because I know typically they are held quarterly, but if we would like to have more frequent interactions, then that's something that's also open.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Oh, thanks, Priyanka. Really appreciate the time you put into this and taking everybody's questions. With that, I guess we'll move on to item
Yes.
6, which is members' items. If anybody, oh, sorry, anything else, Priyanka?
Yes, I do actually have, I think we'll quickly go through this because we are already nearing the ending time. But yeah, I think these are important steps that I would at least like to share right now, and then we can maybe come back to this at the next CMP meeting. So if that's okay, I'll proceed, or if not, then we can move to item 6. All right. Okay, I think we'll quickly go over these. So the CMP network is step 2 of the CMP process. So the network is basically the transportation network that needs to be monitored for future evaluation and like also like looking at trends of things currently in terms of congestion. And typically the CMP network is only roadways which are considered to be congested, but because the Boston region is already so multimodal, we have included different transportation modes as part of the CMP network as well, so that we can put that emphasis on the multimodality aspect of it. So the characteristics or the purpose of the network is basically looking at user trends, either in terms of actual vehicle counts or ridership in case of public transit on a typical weekday. And then MPO staff has set preliminary threshold values for each mode, which determines whether that route or that roadway should be included as part of the CMP network. And then the next step, which is performance measures, is something that would be based on the elements of the CMP network currently, and then the performance measures would be applied to elements of the network. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think in the interest of time, we will move to the next, because this was again part of a discussion question. Maybe we can come back to it in the later meeting. Yes, so currently the components of the CMP network are all of these 9 different modes, you could call them. So looking at roadways, bus networks, rapid transit, which is the metro, then other regional transit authorities as well, other than the MBTA, looking at commuter rails, bike ped networks, and also ferries and freight. Next slide, please. So yeah, these are all, so the slides coming ahead are all a series of like components of the network that have been mapped currently based on data either from 2022 or 2023 as available. And the way we've broken this up is to like identify the data source for the mapping, and then looking at the threshold value that determine that this network or this route should be a part of the CMP network. So this is the roadway data. So the data was taken from the mass.traffic inventory from last year. And it includes expressways and arterial roads and the metric, like the threshold used for that was annual average daily traffic. And if that AADT value is greater than 10,000, that road was included in the network. And a darker, like more red that part is, the higher the AADT that segment has. And I should note here that most of the roads were already a part of the last CMP network, which was formulated in 2019, with exception of maybe 5 or 6 segments which were added with the help of this more recent data. Next, please. Then this is the bus network by the MBTA. So here as well, we used a threshold that was like calculating average ridership for all of the routes. And then after taking average for ridership for all of the routes, the ones that were above average were put as part of the CMP network. So looking at ridership as a measure for threshold for inclusion on the CMP network. So a threshold value of 1,500 riders was set, which is slightly lower than the average of about 2,000, which we got from the ridership calculations. Next, please. This is the rapid transit map. So all of the rapid transit lines, which is red, green, blue, orange, and silver, have been currently included as part of the network and without using a threshold on them, because they are already like not very numerous in nature. So monitoring that is something we thought would be beneficial for the network. Next, please. These are the fixed routes that are operated by the RTAs other than the MBTA, which is the Cape Ann and then the Metro West Transit Authority. Next, please. Yeah, then looking at commuter rail. So for this, because the commuter rail lines go so far out of the Boston region as well, we felt that looking at only ridership is not an equitable enough measure to determine the threshold. So for this, and to bring that sort of equity, what we did was the metric was calculated as ridership per mile length of the route, and then the metric of like riders per mile, wherever it was higher than the average of the total, all of those routes were included as part of this network. Next, please. Yes, I think we can also come back to this at a later time. It's just in the interest of the meeting time right now. Next, please. Yes, so we have also included bike ped networks, as I mentioned earlier, and both of these are like this slide and then the next one, which is the bike network, is biking and walking trails that have been included as part of the common data set published by the MAPC. Next, please. And yeah, this is the bike network. Next. Yes, I think we'll come back. Yeah, and then the ferry. So we've included summer routes and then year-long routes for the ferries, which are operated by the MBTA. And yeah, just because those routes have a higher utilization. And then also we have included all of the ferry stop locations that fall in the Boston region MPO area. Yes, next, please. And then this is the last part of the CMP network, which is looking at freight. So again, we looked at freeways and arterials with freight average annual daily traffic greater than 180, which was the average. And then there's also a separate freight data set called the National Highway Freight Network, and that classifies freight corridors into 4 categories. And then 2 of these apply to the Boston region, which is the critical freight corridors, and then the non-primary highway freight corridors, which are the gray lines, and then the critical ones are the small black segments of roads that we see. And all of these have been included as part of the freight network in the CMP. Yes, next, please. I think, yeah, again, coming back to the questions later. Yeah, and then I think before we move on to this next step of the CMP, I think like in the interest of time, it's better to wrap the discussion up for this meeting at least. So this was sort of an overview of the CMP network that we identified so far. And I know we skipped over most of the questions that we had. So I think that's a good topic of discussion for the next CMP committee meeting, maybe schedule a couple of months from now or around 3 months from now. So that's something that I think I will open up for discussion at this point, instead of going through this performance measures, which was the next step that we are currently working on.
Do you want to take any other questions, Priyanka?
I think we are almost out of time,
Mhm.
but maybe
A couple minutes if anybody wants to.
yeah, just maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, I see Dan has his hands up again. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, a couple of quick points. I think you need to think about like a Venn ring architecture of the density of just the MPO space. So as an example, as you get closer into the core of Boston, would be a tighter metric point versus as you go outwards. So in the case of bicycle networks, I think you need to go down to a quarter mile versus a mile. And the same would be with pedestrian walking as well, so that you get it, because we're denser, simply put.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that feedback.
Dave?
Yeah, I noticed on all the maps, you have different routes and they're only segments of each route. They're not complete routes. And I assume that's because the segments that don't show up below your point and the others above. But I don't think that makes for good reading to look at that, and you don't get a feeling when you just see dash lines there as done, and you don't show the whole route. I think you kind of lose some of the meaning there.
Yeah, that's definitely a good comment. But I think like if we are looking at corridor studies for the future, if we are looking to like reduce congestion in those specific road segments, then looking at like from intersection to intersection is a better way of looking at it, rather than just looking at complete roads where parts of the road may not be congested at all. So if we look at just specific segments, then it's better, like that's better to focus our attention on just those parts to see why congestion is occurring and when it is occurring, and what are some ways that we might take off the stress from just that segment, if that makes sense.
But a corridor is a corridor, and and if there are parts of it are congested and parts of it are less congested, I think you want to see what's less congested, so you can answer the question, or why is it congested here and suddenly it isn't?
Yes, we'll definitely look into that as we are coming up with our performance measures right now.
Ben?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that this is going to be answered right now, but I just wanted to flag that I'm a little confused and curious, I guess, maybe around like in the way that the objectives were written. It felt like, or at least in your explanation of them, that the other multimodal networks besides automobile were there kind of to understand how connectivity or gaps in those networks are influencing vehicle throughput and congestion for motor vehicles. I'm also curious, and maybe this is my lack of understanding of the previous CMPs and being new to this committee, but I know like the MPO in the past has done things like the core capacity report that was looking at congestion and capacity concerns for like the rapid transit network itself. And I don't know if that might not have been as part of the context of the CMP, but I would be curious to see if that's how the feds talk about what is and is included in the CMP, and whether those type of concerns of modes other than automobiles are part of the universe of things that are considered as part of the CMP. Is that
Yeah, I would say like looking at traffic congestion and like relevant metrics for that is definitely something that is like required by federal guidelines. And so most CMP networks would just have roadways as part of them. But the reason that we've included all of these other modes as well is one, to put them on like in the radar for future monitoring, and then also to tie that in with the objective of like improving connectivity between different modes, so that once we know like why certain routes have higher ridership, that can tie in, or like at least we can begin to understand those relationships between like high roadway congested corridors and then high ridership, or like, or even looking at delays in the public transportation, mostly in terms of buses, and see how those relate with each other and how that connectivity can ultimately be improved, so that we are trying to reduce the number of vehicles on the road and encourage people to like explore all of those other options as well.
Great. I think that wraps things up. We're just at time now. So we'll move on to item 6, which is members' items. If any members have any items here. Seeing none, I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn, Diggins.
So I'm wondering, when do we expect the next meeting to be?
Yes, I will send out a similar poll to what I sent earlier to come up with a common time for like either mostly a couple of months from now, so that we can come back again and or maybe we could even meet more like earlier than that, because to go over the parts that we missed right now. But yeah, I'll send out a poll and then we can decide the final date and time for the meeting based on that.
All right. So Leonard had a motion on the table to adjourn. Anybody want a second?
This is John. I'll second that.
Thank you, John. All right. Meeting is adjourned, and we will see you all next time.